My husband declared his love for another woman at dinner. He expected tears. I gave him silence. My name is Claire Alderton. I'm 38 years old. I'm a senior architect at a mid-sized firm in Chicago, and until 11 months ago, I was married to a man named Daniel. I want you to picture a dinner table. White linen.
Candlelight.
The restaurant was called Vela, the kind of place where the wine list is longer than your mortgage paperwork, the kind of place Daniel used to take me for anniversaries. The kind of place that makes you feel like your life is going well. We had been married for 9 years. I had given him those years wholly, my ambition, my patience, my money. More of my money than I ever said out loud. And that night, over a shared appetizer of tuna tartare, Daniel looked across the table at me with those calm gray eyes of his, the eyes I had once thought were steady and trustworthy, and he said, "Claire, I need to tell you something. I'm in love with someone else. I have been for almost 2 years. I think I want to be with her." He said it the way you'd read a prepared statement at a press conference. Measured. Rehearsed. He set down his fork first. That detail stuck with me, that he set down his fork first, like he'd thought about the exact right moment to say it. He expected me to cry. I know he did. Maybe he expected a scene, a shattered wine glass, a gasp, a whispered, "How could you?" Maybe he thought I'd plead. Maybe he hoped I would. Instead, I picked up my wine glass, took a slow sip, and said absolutely nothing. The silence that followed was the most powerful thing I have ever done in my life. This is the story of what happened after that dinner. This is the story of how I lost everything I thought I had and discovered that I had never needed any of it. This is the story of how Daniel Alderton, who believed he held all the cards, learned what it looks like when a quiet woman finally plays hers. To understand the dinner, you need to understand the marriage. And to understand the marriage, you need to understand Daniel. I met Daniel when I was 26. He was 31. He was charming in the way that only certain men are charming. A charm that feels like sunlight, warm and completely natural, the kind you lean into without noticing it slowly burning you. He was a marketing consultant at the time, freelance, always on the verge of a big deal that was perpetually about 6 months away. I was the one with a stable career. I was the one who had just passed my architecture licensure exams, who had a savings account, who understood what a fixed-rate mortgage meant. Daniel understood people. He understood rooms. He knew how to walk into any situation and make everyone in it feel slightly warmer. I thought we complemented each other. Looking back, I think I funded him. We got married when I was 29. Small ceremony. Daniel had wanted something bigger, but I was practical. We bought a house in Lincoln Square, a beautiful craftsman bungalow that I put in 60% of the down payment for, though we split ownership 50-50.
I didn't mind at the time.
That's what marriage meant to me. You pool your resources, you build together, you don't keep score. The trouble was, I was the only one not keeping score. Daniel had 2 settings, charming and dismissive. With everyone else, he was charming. With me, increasingly over time, he was dismissive. My promotions were met with brief congratulations and a pivot back to his own projects. My design awards were mentioned at dinner parties as afterthoughts. "Claire does the architecture thing," he'd say, waving his hand, then launch into whatever he was excited about. There was a pattern I didn't see clearly until much later. Daniel surrounded himself with people who admired him. His friends were people he'd helped, mentored, impressed. His professional network was full of people he dazzled. And me, I was too competent to need him, which meant I was also too competent to admire him in the uncomplicated way he craved. Her name, I would eventually learn, was Sonia. Sonia Breen. She was 29. She worked at the PR firm that contracted with one of Daniel's clients. She laughed at all his jokes and thought his half-formed business ideas were visionary. She was everything I had stopped pretending to be. I don't hate Sonia.
I want to be clear about that.
Sonia didn't make vows to me. Daniel did. The signs were there. They're always there. We just learned to explain them away. The first thing I noticed was the phone. Daniel had always been social, always texting, always on some group chat or another. But around 2 years before that dinner, the phone started coming everywhere with him. To the bathroom. Turned face down on the kitchen counter. Taken into the garage when he needed some air. I told myself he was stressed about a client pitch. I told myself it was nothing. The second thing was the trips. Daniel traveled for work, always had, but the trips got longer. A Wednesday to Friday became a Tuesday to Saturday. A conference in Denver that he'd never mentioned until the week before. I asked to come along once, just once, because I had a site visit nearby and thought we could make a weekend of it. It's a working trip, Claire, he said, not looking up from his laptop. You'd be bored out of your mind. I remember standing in the doorway of our home office watching him type, thinking, when did he stop wanting me in rooms with him? The third thing, and this one I felt in my chest, was a Saturday morning about 14 months before the dinner. I'd made coffee, brought him a cup, and found him laughing at something on his phone. Not a polite chuckle. A real laugh. The kind of loose, delighted laugh I hadn't heard from him in years. He looked up, saw me, and his face closed like a book. What? He said. Nothing, I said. I brought your coffee. I wanted to ask who was making him laugh like that. I didn't. I think some part of me already knew, and some part of me wasn't ready to know. I tried, in my way, to address things. Not directly, I'll own that. I am not someone who leads with confrontation. I suggested couples therapy twice. The first time, Daniel said he didn't believe in paying someone to tell him how to feel. The second time, he said things were fine, and I was creating problems where there weren't any. You've always done this, he said, in a tone that was almost gentle, which made it worse. You analyze everything until it breaks. We're fine, Claire. Stop looking for cracks. Gaslighting has a particular texture. It doesn't feel like someone lying to you. It feels like someone handing you a mirror and saying, the problem is the person looking back at you. I started to second-guess my own instincts. I worked longer hours. I threw myself into a hospital expansion project that was genuinely the most complex work I'd ever done. I told myself that if I was busy enough, fulfilled enough, the unease in my stomach would settle. It didn't settle. It just got quieter. About 6 months before the dinner, I found a receipt in his jacket pocket. I wasn't snooping. I was sending it to the dry cleaner. It was from a hotel in Milwaukee. A suite. 2 nights. The dates were when he'd told me he was visiting his college friend, Marcus. I sat on the bed for a long time with that receipt in my hand. Then I folded it carefully, put it in the small drawer of my nightstand, and went to make dinner. I didn't confront him. Not yet. I was still hoping I was wrong. And I think, God, I'm not proud of this. I think I was also afraid. I had built so much of my life around this marriage. The house, the joint accounts, the future we'd sketched out. I was afraid of what it meant if it was all a lie. The dinner at Vela was not spontaneous. I understood that the moment he set down his fork. He had made the reservation. He had chosen the table. We were seated in a corner, semi-private, the kind of arrangement you'd want if you needed someone to cry quietly without disturbing other diners. He had even ordered my favorite Sancerre, already breathing in the ice bucket when I arrived. It was choreographed. That was the thing that undid me, more than the words themselves.
He had planned this.
He had thought about how to do it in a way that contained me. After he said what he said, after I sat in my silence, and he grew increasingly uncomfortable in his, he continued. He'd rehearsed a lot, it turned out. I've been thinking about this for a long time, he said. I didn't want to hurt you.
I want you to know that.
But I think we've been growing apart for years, and I think deep down you know that too. We've been growing apart. He was making it mutual. He was making it inevitable. He was making it something that happened to us, rather than something he had chosen to do. I think it'll be better for both of us, he continued, his hands now loosely folded on the table in that composed way of his. I was thinking we could sell the house and split things fairly. I don't want this to be ugly. I took another sip of wine.
Claire, he said.
Say something. I looked at him. I thought about 9 years. I thought about the down payment. I thought about the Saturday morning laugh I wasn't supposed to see. I thought about a hotel receipt folded in a nightstand drawer. I thought about 2 years of being quietly, patiently lied to by a man who had planned the location of this conversation. And then I thought, he has no idea what I've already done. Enjoy your evening, Daniel, I said. I set my napkin on the table, stood up, picked up my coat, and walked out of Vela into the November cold. He texted me 17 times that night. I know because I counted them the next morning, reading each one over coffee, while I watched the sun come up over the back garden. That was the last moment I felt afraid. After that, I only felt clear. Here is what Daniel did not know. He did not know that 3 months before that dinner, after finding the hotel receipt, after a sleepless night in which I finally stopped lying to myself, I had made an appointment with a family law attorney named Patricia Osei. Patricia was the kind of woman who wore bright colors and spoke in sentences precise enough to cut glass. She had handled some of the most complex divorces in Cook County. My colleague Miriam had used her and told me simply, "If you ever need her, she's the one." Patricia had reviewed everything I brought her. The house deed, our joint accounts, Daniel's business formation documents, the financial records I had access to as co-signer on various accounts. She'd also reviewed something else. Because here is what else Daniel did not know. For the previous 18 months, I had quietly been moving money. Not stealing. Let me be precise about that. The money I moved was mine. When we bought the house, I had contributed $94,000 of the $155,000 down payment. Over the years, I had also been the primary earner, contributing more to our joint savings than Daniel did in most months. Daniel had always managed the joint accounts. He liked doing it, said it gave him a sense of control, and I had let him. But I had my own accounts too. A savings account he knew about. And starting 18 months ago, a second one he didn't. I am an architect. I am exceptionally good at planning structures that other people will one day live inside. I am exceptionally good at understanding which walls are load-bearing and which ones can come down. I had decided, quietly and without ceremony, that this wall was coming down, and I was going to be the one holding the plans. Patricia had told me something important. In Illinois, assets accumulated during a marriage are generally subject to equitable distribution, but separate property brought into the marriage and the documented contributions each party made, all of it matters. The down payment discrepancy mattered. The income records mattered. Daniel's business debts, which I discovered were more significant than he'd ever told me, those mattered too. Daniel also didn't know that I had spoken to our mortgage lender, or that I had quietly obtained copies of all our joint tax returns for the past 7 years, or that I had already drafted a formal property settlement proposal, or that Miriam, my colleague and closest friend, had been helping me document every piece of it with the quiet efficiency of someone who has watched someone else be underestimated and is viscerally tired of it. That night, while Daniel sent his 17 texts, I sat at my kitchen table, our kitchen table, but not for much longer, and I finalized my timeline. Patricia would file the petition Monday morning. By Tuesday, Daniel would be served. He thought he had staged an ending. He had actually started a process that was entirely under my control. Monday morning came. Patricia filed. Daniel was served at his office on Tuesday, shortly before noon. His assistant called him out of a client meeting, apparently. I know this because I had asked Patricia to have it delivered then. Not out of cruelty, out of efficiency. I needed him to be in a professional space when he first read the papers. I needed him to have to compose himself. He called me 6 times between noon and 2 o'clock. I let every call go to voicemail. At 2:15, he came to the house. I was working from home that day. I had known he would come. "What is this?" he said at the door, the papers in his hand. His voice was higher than usual. He was not composed. "It's a divorce petition," I said. "Would you like to come in?" He came in. He paced. He said things that revealed a great deal about what he had actually expected from me. He had expected me to be blindsided. He had expected the dinner at Vela to set the terms, his timeline, his narrative of 2 people peacefully going their separate ways. "You had this ready," he said. It wasn't quite an accusation. It was more like a recalibration. "You've been planning this." "I've been prepared," I said. "There's a difference." "The property settlement proposal," he started, "is based on documented financial contributions," I said. "Patricia can walk your attorney through the specifics." His jaw tightened. "I was trying to do this nicely, Claire." I looked at him steadily. I thought about how long I had been the reasonable one. How long I had smoothed edges, overlooked things, made space. I thought about how nicely is just a word men use when they mean, without consequences for me. Then cooperate with the process, I said, and it will be perfectly nice. He left without saying anything else. I sat back down at my drafting table. Outside, the November trees were bare and stark and somehow beautiful. The following week, I changed the locks. Legally, under advice of counsel, since I had requested exclusive occupancy of the marital home pending settlement. Daniel moved in with a friend, not Sonia, interestingly, which told me something about how real that relationship actually was. His attorney reached out to Patricia 3 days later. They wanted to negotiate. Of course they did. There were 2 confrontations. The legal one, which I won methodically, and the personal one, which I won with silence. The legal process took 4 months. Illinois allows uncontested divorce on grounds of irreconcilable differences, but ours was contested. Daniel contested the property settlement, arguing that the down payment contribution was a marital gift and not a separate asset. His attorney made decent arguments.
Patricia made better ones.
The judge agreed with Patricia on the fundamental structure of the settlement. I received a proportionally greater share of the equity in the house based on my documented contribution. Daniel received his share as well, but after his business debts, some of which were joint, and which he had never been transparent about, were factored into the calculation, his net position was considerably less rosy than he'd imagined. His business debts turned out to be the most significant surprise to both him and his attorney. Patricia had found them through the tax records. Nearly $80,000 in business liabilities that Daniel had been rolling over, restructuring, keeping just out of sight. I hadn't known about them either, which is its own kind of grief, the realization of how much had been kept from you. But by the time the settlement was finalized, those debts were his alone. The personal confrontation happened on the day we signed the final settlement documents. We were in Patricia's conference room, a neutral space with a long oak table and a view of Michigan Avenue. Daniel looked tired. He had lost some weight. Sonia and he were apparently taking space. His mother had told mine, which meant the entire arrangement had become a semi-public humiliation of his own making. We signed in sequence. Claire Alderton, Daniel Alderton. When it was done, both attorneys left the room briefly to make copies, and we were alone for the first time since the day he'd come to the house. He looked at me across the oak table. "I didn't think you'd fight," he said. His voice was quiet. Not angry anymore. Something more honest than anger. "I know," I said. "Was it always like this? Did you always have this?" He made a vague gesture with his hand. "Strategy?" I offered. He nodded. "I'm an architect, Daniel. I plan structures for a living. I know which walls are load-bearing and which ones can come down without the whole thing collapsing." He was quiet. Then, "I'm sorry, Claire. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I am." I looked at him for a long moment. He was not a monster. He was a man who had needed admiration more than he'd needed honesty, and had made choices around that need for a long time. I had married that man. I had been complicit in letting certain dynamics calcify, because challenging them felt harder than tolerating them. But I had also protected myself when it counted. I had been quiet when quiet was the right weapon. I had been precise when precision was the right tool. And I had never, not once, let him see me come undone. "Apologies are for people who need them," I said. "I've been past needing yours for a while now." Patricia came back in with the copies. I stood, shook her hand, took my documents, and walked out of the conference room and into the bright cold of Michigan Avenue, where the city moved around me with total indifference. It was the most peaceful I had felt in years.
Let me tell you where things stand now.
The house sold 8 months after the settlement. I had already found a condo in the West Loop, a top-floor unit with floor-to-ceiling windows and a terrace where I drink my coffee every morning regardless of the weather. I designed the interior layout myself. Every room is exactly what I want it to be. There is no space in it that was designed to contain anyone else's ego. The hospital expansion project I was working on through all of this won a state design award in the spring. I stood at the podium and accepted the award in front of 200 people, and I thought, Daniel once waved his hand at a dinner party and said I'd do the architecture thing. I hope whoever he was texting that night saw the announcement in the industry journal. Daniel's consulting business contracted significantly in the year following our divorce. Some of his clients, it turned out, had been referred to him through my professional network, connections I had quietly maintained over the years, favors I had called in, relationships I had cultivated. I didn't actively sabotage him. I simply stopped being a silent resource for him. The clients who had been loyal to the connection, rather than to Daniel specifically, found other vendors. He and Sonia are no longer together, from what I understand. I say from what I understand, because I genuinely don't track this information. It came to me through my mother, who has excellent gossip instincts and poor boundaries, which is a combination I've made my peace with. Miriam, my colleague, my co-conspirator, my person through all of this, got promoted to partner at our firm 2 months after I did. We celebrated at a wine bar in River North and closed the place down at 2 in the morning. It was one of the best nights of my life. I also, about 6 months after the divorce was finalized, started seeing someone. His name is Marcus, not Daniel's friend Marcus, a different Marcus, and he's a structural engineer who makes real coffee and asks follow-up questions when I talk about my work. He listens. Entirely quietly, like what I'm saying is the most interesting thing in the room. I am not used to that yet. I'm learning to let it be normal. I've been asked, more than once, whether I'm angry at Daniel. Whether I have closure. Whether I've forgiven him. Closure is a strange word. It implies a door that was once open is now shut. I think of it differently. I think what happens when you survive something like this is not that a door closes. It's that you finally look around the room you're actually standing in and realize it's much better than the one you were trying to hold on to. I don't carry anger anymore. Anger is heavy, and I've always been careful about what I carry. What I carry now is knowledge about myself, about the choices I made, about the things I tolerated for too long and why. I was so committed to being the rational, stable, non-dramatic partner that I had suppressed my own perceptions. I had let him tell me I was looking for cracks in something that was fine. Here is what I know now. When your instincts tell you something is wrong, they are not being dramatic. When you feel alone in a room with someone who is supposed to be your partner, that feeling is data. When you find a hotel receipt and your first instinct is to fold it up and put it in a drawer because you're not ready, that is a grace period, not a failure. But the grace period has a limit. I know women in situations like mine who didn't have the financial preparation I had, who didn't have a Miriam, who didn't have the professional stability that let them fight. I was lucky in those specific ways, and I know it. If you're sitting somewhere right now and something in this story feels familiar, the dismissed instincts, the slow erasure, the slow accumulation of hotel receipts you keep folding up, I want you to hear me. The preparation matters. Not because you're planning a war, because you are worth protecting. Because the version of yourself that walks out of a restaurant without tears, that turns 17 unanswered texts into a legal petition, that accepts an award in front of 200 people, that version of yourself is already inside you. She is waiting for you to stop explaining away the evidence. I'm writing this on my terrace, West Loop, 11 months after a dinner at Vela. The city is doing what it does. My coffee is good. The light is coming up over the skyline in a way that has no business being as beautiful as it is. Daniel expected tears. I gave him silence. And silence, it turns out, was the most expensive thing I ever gave him.